Look at the book of Galatians. The thing about Galatians is called, in a lot of Christian circles, it's called the Christian's Declaration of Independence. You ever heard that? You ever heard it called that before? That's like independence. It's our independence from the bondage of the law. That's how they read. And how they get that, we'll take it. We don't want to. You don't want to actually. You never want to teach against error. You always want to teach truth. And so we're going to touch on a few things that goes on in the Christian circles and why they read things the way they do and why we think it's absolutely stupid. But we're really going to try and look at what the text says itself, okay? So we want to set some foundations to establish both. This is going to kind of establish why they see the things the way they see them and why we see things the way we see them. The first scripture, for all you guys who are Awana people, what does Awana stand for? Do you remember? Yeah, approved workman, 2 Timothy 2:15, right? Study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman was not ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, so this verse is very, very important in how we understand Scripture and also how the evil people, the dispensationalists view Scripture. Dispensationalism, if you open up your phone book and you open up the church, every church in this area, except for one, maybe two, would consider themselves what's called dispensationalists. Are you familiar with that term? Dispensationalism is that the Bible has been segmented into 7 different sections, 7 different ages. There's the age of Adam, there's the age of Noah, there's the age of Abraham, and we're in the age of grace is how they see it. And so the Bible is segmented into 7 different sections, and they use this passage in 2 Timothy 2:15 to rightly divide the word of truth, means to divide it into the right sections. That's how they read that passage. Now, I don't ever do anything without something. So here we have a sandwich. You guys had dinner yet? Yes. That's too bad. That makes it harder. Dorothy, would you come here, please? Come here. I'm choosing Dorothy specifically because she knows she has definite preferences. Okay? So study yourself approved, studies to show yourself approved unto God, a workman needs not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay? So, study to show the sandwich approved. The vegetarian needs not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the sandwich, right? So, if I offer you the sandwich, it doesn't help any if you already know you don't want it. Pretend you want it, okay? Pretend you're at least even considering it, all right? You want to study the sandwich, to rightly divide it. You don't want to be ashamed because you don't want it to spit it out in front of everybody, right? So what does it mean to study yourself? Now, here's the dispensationalism. Let me help you out. I'm going to rightly divide the sandwich. I was in a hurry. So, does that help you make your decision? No. What does it mean to rightly divide the sandwich? Study or show yourself approved to rightly divide the sandwich. What do you need to do? You need to open it up. You need to find out what's in there. It's actually nothing in there. It's just bread and meat. It's a Keith sandwich. It's just bread and meat. That's a Keith sandwich. I have no idea what that was. So anyway, but that's the difference. See, when we read this, when we say we study to show yourself approved, rightly dividing the sandwich, we want to know what's in it. We don't want to separate it into this little things. Now, here's another thing. Study to show yourself approved unto God. A workman needs not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Now, here's something very interesting. In what was Paul's religion? You can sit down if you want. You don't have to stand there. I'm not going to make you eat it. What was Paul's religion? Yeah. If you ever ask Paul, where do you go to church, Paul? Yeah, he was Jewish. He was a Jew. In fact, 3 times in the New Testament, he's asked, or he has an opportunity to present what his faith is. He never once calls himself Christian. Never once says, I'm a Christian. He always says, I'm a Jew. He was trained in the strictest and actually the highest level of integrity in the system of education there. He's trained by a guy named Gamaliel. Gamaliel was the superintendent of education of schools for all of Israel. He was the guy. And Paul sat at his feet. So he had a very, very intense, very, very disciplined Jewish understanding. So that's important. We understand when Paul talks about rightly dividing the word of truth. When we think of that, we think that's the Bible, right? But to Paul, it wasn't the Bible. It wasn't even the Old Testament. The word of truth is the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, word of the truth. You have 2 different segments of the Bible. In Paul's days, you had the Torah and the Haftorah, and that's divided into 3 different sections. You have the books of history, and then you have the Psalms and the Proverbs, the musical interludes, and then you have the prophets. So you have those 3 different elements, and you have Torah. So you have Torah and Haftorah, and everything you have. Torah is the foundation of all knowledge on which the rest of Scripture was built. If you go back even farther, you go back to Isaiah's day. They didn't have any Old Testament, did they? They just had the Torah, right? So they had Torah, but they had something else. They had the Torah and what they called the testimonies, and that's when Isaiah says in Isaiah 8:20, to the law and to the testimonies, if they speak not according to this word, because there's no light in them. He's saying to the Torah itself, but also to the teachings that expound on that. But what I'm saying is that when Paul talks about the word of truth, he's talking about something very, very specifically. He's talking about the first 5 books of Moses, the Torah. So that's what you're rightly dividing, not the entire Bible. Just those first verses of the Bible. Now, who's a math whiz? Are you a math whiz? Good at math? Okay. I have 4 sections here, right? How many sandwiches do I have? 1 sandwich. Okay? So, when you rightly divide the word of truth, you're dividing the one Torah, the one thing, right? So he's not talking about a whole bunch of different things there. He's talking about rightly dividing the word of truth. So the dispensationalists will look at, say, we're going to divide the Bible, which Paul wasn't even talking about the whole Bible. He's only talking about the Torah. But we're going to divide the Bible into all these different sections, and we're going to say, this applies to us, this applies to somebody else, this applies to somebody else, and that applied to people a long time ago. We don't even care about them anymore. Okay, so actually this one hasn't happened yet, so we're right here. So we look into this one to find out what's in this one. Okay, the rest of it doesn't matter. Well, if you get given a piece of a sandwich and you don't know where it came from, you want to know kind of what was in the whole sandwich? You'd like to know where it came from, what it was all about, right? So when you're rightly dividing the word of truth, you're investigating the whole, not just the one little piece, right? So now, something also is that we don't want to take one piece of Scripture and say we're based all of our understanding on the Bible based on that one piece of Scripture. We want to compare Scripture with Scripture, right? So if Scripture contradicts another place, then that's bad. So Paul says elsewhere, also in 2 Timothy, which is very important because it's the same context, he says, all Scripture is given by inspiration of God. That's 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. The man of God may be complete, thoroughly furnished unto every good work. I'm talking fast because I can see the clock. I only got 20 minutes left. So what does that mean? That means 1 sandwich. Right? All Scripture. See, the thing is, though, when he says all Scripture, he didn't say the word of truth, did he? He's saying all the writings, all of them. So he's from Genesis to Malachi is what he's referring to at that point. Okay? So, yeah. It is. I'll save it for Wendy.